It's the final day of the 20th African Growth and Opportunity Act Forum in Johannesburg. AGOA, which was introduced in 2000, allows exporters from more than 30 eligible African countries duty-free and quota-free access to the lucrative U.S. market. President Cyril Ramaphosa has called for more reforms and backs the calls to have AGOA renewed. eNCA reporter Aviwe Mtila is tracking that story and joins me now. Good afternoon to you, Aviwe, and thank you so much for your time. What do you make of the remarks by President Cyril Ramaphosa that says in the past 2 decades AGOA has been underutilized? What's likely to change after discussions today?
So that's a general sentiment, Cindy, that we're getting here, even from some of the trade ministers, that they want the enhancement of the AGOA trade agreement in its entirety to benefit the African continent. For example, they're talking of the raw products that are often mined or just produced by the African continent being then, refined and produced in the African continent before then it's exported abroad. Of course, the other look is at the extension of the AGOA agreement in its entirety. We do know that it lapses on the 30th of September 2025, but there are talks to fast-track the extension of the agreement for at least another 10 to 20 years. Have that agreement in place before the U.S. elections. In fact, just to get an indication of some of the discussions that are currently happening between the ministers of trade from the numerous African countries and the U.S. administration, I am joined by Morena Musikafela, the Minister of Trade and Industries in Botswana. Minister, thank you for joining us at eNCA, but maybe talk us through some of the important talking points and decisions that are being currently taken by both the U.S. administration and the African delegation here.
Thank you very much, and let me say good afternoon to Botswana, good afternoon to South Africans, and to you South Africans, we owe you a debt of gratitude for your warm reception of all of us. We are in discussions about the extension of the AGOA, not only its extension, its timely extension, and also the improvement of its stipulations to widen the scope of products which can gain access into the U.S. market duty-free and quota-free. Yes, last year when we met, we spoke about a possibility of an extension indefinitely, but the Americans did indicate that it is not inimical with their expectations. It cannot be something which is put in place for an indefinite period of time. At that time, we spoke about a 20-year period. We thought it was ambitious then. We then toned it down to a 10-year period. But I was quite pleasantly surprised when I learned for the first time I sunk my teeth into the piece of the bill which has been introduced by Senator John Kennedy in September last year. Obviously, September this year, I beg your pardon. Obviously, at the time that he introduced it, our discussions had already started. But notably, in it, he asked for 20 years. And when I read it, I did pick it up that it has been read for the second time. It is now being committed to the Finance Committee. So I'm just thinking aloud as to why all along in these talks, since being here in Nasrec, we've been speaking about 10 years. But yes, I did pick it up that ministers there said at least 10 years. I would have expected it. But if I'd read it before, I would have also raised it to the bar up to 20 and placed it at least 20 years, because Senator John Kennedy has pronounced on a 20-year period. So I'm not so sure what the import of it having been read for the second time means. It possibly means to me that they've agreed upon it, and I'm not so sure on the extent to which the Finance Committee can reject and reduce it down to 10. And he has also, in that same bill, asked for an expansion of the line of products which can be permitted to be placed find their way into the U.S. market duty-free and quota-free. So he's asking for a substitution because it was coming to an end on the 30th of September 2025. He's asking in it for a substitution of that date to the 30th of September 2045, I beg your pardon. So it's a very positive direction. AGOA is it's a two-way benefit instrument. Americans have indicated, and I saw that in the bill, that it has sustained about 120,000 jobs in America. Americans are interested in partnering with developing economies, especially fast-developing economies, and have identified the sub-Saharan Africa to be composed of economies which are considered to be fast-developing. They have their own interest also in expanding that growth, and so too do we as Africans. We have our interest in expanding our growth, and access to a market on these terms I can say to you that it is a wonder. Duty-free, quota-free. Yes, there are challenges here and there. Africans have, from various quarters, have indicated that made very little use of it.
Let's
yes.
talk about those challenges. What are the challenges that are currently being presented to the U.S. administration, and looking at those enhancements and how to go about enhancing the current AGOA trade between the U.S. and Africa?
Africans, the voices from Africans time and again complain of stringent sanitary and phytosanitary stipulations which make it difficult to gain access in terms of the food sector into the American market. And other requirements which are quite stringent, they find them quite difficult to overcome, and also being very costly to overcome. A lot of our African players, because we as politicians get feedback from the business community, is often SMMEs attempt to gain access, and on account of being small as they are, especially women-led and youth-led, they find the costliness of gaining access, just even transacting, and also transport and logistics in getting their products, because mainly it's trade in goods. But of course we are considering trades in services also. They find it very expensive to gain access into the American market. There's also lack of knowledge of the market intelligence in the US. But AGOA's existence alone has at least given us some mileage in acquainting ourselves with the market. Not as great as it should be, but that acquaintance is the beginning. These are baby steps. They enable us to know what Americans need, and it enables our companies to forge relations with American companies, relations which can also be maintained outside AGOA. Even if a country graduates out of AGOA or AGOA comes to an end, just this opportunity, it's one which has gotten us to forge relations. I can speak for my country, Botswana. We have had a fair share of success. We did clothing, textiles, and apparel, just like Lesotho are doing. Yes, we did meet up with challenges of rules of origin, because it's quite important that the goods must be African-made. So often when components of them, and a heavy component, a part of it comes from outside, mainly from Asia, they then fall foul of rules of origin. And competition also came. In 2005, there was the multiple fiber agreement, which allowed Chinese and Indian companies to gain access, and they gave Africans tremendous competition. And Botswana was not spared. The companies are slowly but gradually folded up, and they need government assistance. And I suppose why they then mushroomed or sprung up in Lesotho was Lesotho supported, government did support. So they need government supporting to be piggybacked and assisted to cross the river for some time.
Government support. Thank you very much, Morena Musi Khafela, there, of course, Trade and Industries Minister from Botswana, just giving us feedback on some of the discussions that have been happening between the Ministers of Trade of the African continent as well as the U.S. administration on day 3. We're expecting feedback then from South Africa's Ministers of Trade and Industry, Ibrahim Patel, at around 3:30 and up to 4:30, where they'll give, of course, the official feedback of the discussions that have been happening over the last 3 days.
And Aviwe, just give us a sense in terms of the exhibitors at AGOA, very briefly, the diversity of businesses that are there.
Certainly diverse in their nature. We've got businesses coming in from Madagascar selling vanilla beans. We've got South African businesses, even from Botswana. They've really come out in their numbers. But the one issue that I picked up is something that the Trade and Industries Minister from Botswana has actually spoken of, just the difficulty in doing business, some of the red tape that has been put that they hope will be looked into. I was speaking to one lady from Botswana suggesting that some of these documents that she has to sign cost some 100,000 rand, and as a small business, really affordability becomes an issue. So some of those issues that they hope will be ironed out, while currently being ironed out over the past 3 days, and hope then some of the resolutions that we hear from Minister Patel will talk to the ease of doing business with the US and the African continent in its entirety.
And of course, reducing the cost burden to SMEs as well. But Aviwe, we're going to have to leave it there. That is eNCA reporter Aviwe Mtila. He is at the AGOA Forum, currently underway as it wraps up its plenary sessions and discussions. We'll get a wrap of that particular forum a little bit later this afternoon.